Ladies and gentlemen of the media, very good morning and welcome to this press conference being hosted by the Honorable Attorney General and the Minister of Legal Affairs, Anil Nandlall. Minister Nandlall will first make an opening statement, after which we will take questions on that statement. Depending on time, of course, we will entertain questions outside of the statement. Minister, good morning and welcome. Straight ahead.
Thank you, Eddie, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. And I want to thank you very much for being here with us, sacrificing, of course, your busy Saturday schedule. As you may be aware, each minister was instructed to update the press and, of course, the population on the state of the ministry, largely because we have not had a parliamentary sitting since December 2018, and as a result, a lot of matters that ought to be in the public domain through the parliamentary process were not in the public domain because we didn't have any parliament. So I will begin that update now, and of course, we are only in office approximately 2 weeks, and it's still a work in progress, and I will have to do a second or perhaps a third update of this type so that I can bring you up to speed with what is the status quo in the ministries and the ministry and the various sectors that that fall under the administration of the ministry. But before I get into that, I want to speak briefly about a matter of two matters of national importance. One is the investigations into GCOM operations, March 2nd, 2020 elections, and subsequent events in relation thereto. Now, you would have read in the news that the state has assumed conduct of the investigations, and the state has also indicated that the state will take over the private criminal charges pending and will discharge its responsibility in relation to investigating and prosecuting those charges, or maybe more charges that may be disclosed by the investigations. The two agencies of the state engaged is the Guyana Police Force and the Guyana Police Force and the Director of Public Prosecutions. The Guyana Police Force is the investigative arm of the state, and the Director of Public Prosecutions is the prosecutorial arm of the state. So those are the two agencies that will now assume conduct of the investigations and prosecutions of those charges that may come out of the investigations and those that are pending. The DPP will determine whether or not prosecutors will be retained. That's a function of the Director of Public Prosecution in the exercise of our constitutional powers, and that office will determine who the prosecutors are going to be, if prosecutors are going to be retained, and the terms and conditions of those retainer. So I want to bring you up to speed on that issue. The second issue that is of national importance that I want to speak on is the actions taken against a financial operations that is operating out of the east coast of Demerara. While we were in opposition, we received numerous reports that there is some investment scheme or alleged investment scheme where thousands of persons have deposited money, and by some operation they are promised repayment and at a very high rate of interest. we made inquiries while we were in the opposition, and we were told that this operation is without any license. When we got into office, the complaints increased from members of the public, and the government launched a multi-sector approach involving the Guyana Security Council, the Bank of Guyana, the Guyana Police Force, and the Financial Intelligence Unit, as well as the Attorney General. And an investigation has begun. The principal operators, or the operators who are principally involved in the management of this alleged financial scheme, are currently in custody, assisting the police with their investigation. The Government of Guyana wishes to assure that our main priority is to ensure that if this scheme is unlawful, and from all indications it is unlawful, that our main priority is to ensure that the persons who have put money in this scheme are reimbursed. And we ask members of the public or persons who are implicated or who have invested their monies in this scheme to come forward and assist the police with their investigations. And we also have to build a database of persons who have invested and the amount of money that they have invested, so that they can be reimbursed if possible. So far as I am aware, this company or this operations has no bank account in Guyana. They have applied for license to operate, and let me make it clear, because I see comments on the Facebook blaming the government and faulting the government for not granting licenses. The government does not grant licenses. Licenses are granted by agencies of the state who operate under statutory provisions. The license are granted in the exercise of those statutory powers based upon the requirements laid down in the particular statute. Applicants and applications are vetted by those statutory agencies, staffed with technical people, and those agencies determine whether an application has merit or an applicant is qualified to be granted the license for which he or she or it is applying. So it has nothing to do with the government. It's agencies of the state that have conduct of these matters. Based upon the information I have received, applications were made to the Bank of Guyana for some type of license. That was rejected. Applications were made to the Guyana Securities Council for license. That was rejected. And under the previous government, both the Bank of Guyana and the Guyana Securities Council informed the various ministers of this scheme operating without a license, and they received no response. The gentleman who is involved, I understand, is a Cuban national and is now a naturalized Guyanese. When his naturalization advertisement was put in the newspapers, I am told, and I've seen the letters, the Guyana Security Council wrote to the relevant minister, Winston Felix, and Minister Kemraj Ramjatan, informing them of the historical antecedents of this gentleman. But that letter, those letters, received no response. From all indications, millions of US dollars are involved, and we don't know, or the agencies, the investigators don't know where the monies are. Because it's not in a bank account. There is no bank account in Guyana, although the gentleman claims that he has several bank accounts in the commercial banks, and nothing can be found in any of the commercial banks. So the investigations are continuing, and I ask the members of the public to please understand that the government is working to recover your money. That's the government's priority. Because from all indications, if this thing was allowed to grow, and it was allowed to grow, if it was allowed to grow bigger, it would have ensnared more and more money. And right now, I am told it's millions of US dollars, which apparently can be found. So the police force and the different agencies are working to get to the bottom of this operation. So those are the two matters that I wanted to speak about at the beginning of this press conference. Now I move to the ministry itself. Firstly, the ministry has two programs that are being funded by the IADB, the Inter-American Development Bank. A project, $8 million US project, dealing with overcrowding of the prisons, and that's the project that I spoke about earlier, being housed in Hatfield Street. And there's another project that deals with the establishment of a law reform commission. Now, both projects have not been performing in accordance with the schedule of work, and I spoke with the IADB, and the people are very dissatisfied with the progress that have been made under the two projects. In terms of the Law Reform Commission, since 2016, a Law Reform Commission bill was passed and a Law Reform Commission was established. In 2017, it was staffed. I have here a list of staffing: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 staff members earning $2.138 million per month, and there is not a law reform commission. They have rented a building, and I have just done the expenses from 2017 to now. Rental of building, $28 million have been spent to rent a building, and no work has been done. A total of $92,312,351 have so far been expended on this project, and there is no law reform commission. Nearly $100 million of taxpayers' money from since 2017 have been expended, and the commissioners to the commission has not yet been appointed. And this is an IADB project, and the people indicated that they are prepared to pull the project unless we move swiftly on it. So we will begin to move quickly to establish this commission, to appoint commissioners. In the statute creating the Law Reform Commission, I don't know if you can recall, the opposition was heavily critical of it because the president appoints all the commissioners. There are 7 to be appointed, and all are appointed by the president. A better approach we had advocated then is for nominees to come from the various sectors in the country. For example, a nominee from the Guyana Bar Association, a nominee from the Private Sector Commission, a nominee from the labor movement, a nominee from the religious organization, a nominee from the University of Guyana, just speaking at the top of my head. So we think that the whole statute should be refashioned so that the Law Reform Commission, when it sits, it represents the interest of the entire country. Law reform is very important in a modern developing society like ours to keep our legal architecture up to date and up to standard. But we can't have a commission that doesn't reflect the population and the various interests in the population. So we plan to appoint quickly under the current legislation so as to not to have the project pulled by the bank, but we will in due course refashion the legislation so that the Law Reform Commission can be properly constituted and constituted in a manner that reflects the best interest of our country. The SARA falls under the Ministry of Legal Affairs as well, and I've not had an opportunity to deal yet with SARA, but at the level of the Office of the President, a signal has already been sent that SARA will be rendered redundant. It has not done anything as far as I'm aware. It has filed a series of cases against PPP leaders. That's all it has done in office in relation to the infamous Prado scheme, as they call it. And all those cases are going to fail because they were badly instituted. You can recall one case was filed against the Guyana Bank for Trade and Industry, and the judge dismissed that case because the case was filed in the wrong name. SARA is not the body corporate. The body corporate is the director. So it's the director who is the sole, the corporate sole, and the case should have been instituted in the name of the corporate sole and not SARA. So all those cases that have been filed are likely to be dismissed for that technical deficiency. So when you view it, it basically, I don't know what else has been done. I'll meet with the agency soon and find out what they have done. But as far as from a public perspective, that's all I know that they have done, and they have done it wrongly. So, you know, that's an agency that the Office of the President has indicated will be closed down shortly. Our concern remains the number of, not the political fat cats at the top, because there are a few of them there working over $1 million and more each per month. Those are not our concerns. Our concerns are the lower staff. There are about 40 staff in SARA, and if you shut the agency down, you're putting 40 persons out of work. And that's our concern right now. But those at the top, we have no difficulty in disposing of their contract. And I speak of Eric Phillips and Takuma Ogunseye and Clive Thomas. Those are political appointments, and we have no difficulty in dispensing with those. But our concerns remain the ordinary Guyanese person who is employed at the agency. In terms of the legislative agenda, you know, well, we at the drafting department of the chambers, there are certain pieces of legislation that are ready to come out. The Hire Purchase Act that has been completed. We are working on the final stages of a Modern Arbitration Act that should be out soon. Of course, we have been charged with the responsibility of working on the local content policy legislation that is being worked at. Then you have the Petroleum Commission Act. Well, that's in the Parliament, and we have to rigorously review that with a view of creating a proper structure. I remember the previous minister, Minister Trotman, was himself dissatisfied with the manner in which that bill was drafted and transmitted to a select committee where it still is. A bail act is also something that's undergoing its final stages, as well as sentencing guidelines for judges and magistrates. Those are important things that are completing their preparation in the drafting department. There's a modern securities bill as well that's being worked on. But in due course, you will be hearing more from the legislative agenda of the state from Minister Gail Teixeira. But these are the pieces of legislation that are completing work now in the drafting department of the Attorney General Chambers. Now, as you are aware, there have been a number of political cases where lawyers were hired by the state to represent the state's interest, we continue to maintain that every one of those cases was without merit, but the state, the Attorney General and the state through its, well, the government, the previous government, through its various machinations, keep filing them one after the other, and the population was always wondering who paying for these cases and who paying for these lawyers. Well, I have some of the invoices or some of the financial information, and I stress that this is some, and this is not all, and I am still in the process of getting all up. I may need the professional services of the Auditor General, because I don't think that what I have is the complete bill in relation to those cases. So if we can start with the first one, I think would have been the case against the GCOM chair, Zulfikar Mustafa. Zulfikar Mustafa, you will recall, at the Court of Appeal, the Attorney General retained Mr. Hal Gallup and Mr. Thorne, two Barbadians, Ralph Thorne and Hal Gallup. Mr. Ralph Thorne bill for the Attorney General and Mustafa was $30,920 and 97 cents. So Ralph Thorne, in the case of Zulfikar Mustafa and the Attorney General, $30,920 and 97 cents. Then you have Mr. Hal Gallup in that same case. His bill was $15,566.05. $15,566.05. And this doesn't include ticket and hotel accommodation and so on, which were all paid for. And they are in the retainer contracts. I can make the retainer contracts for you public at some point in time if you wish. But these are the sums of money that were paid as legal fees. Then you have the same Mr. Ralph Thorne. He was paid for a case filed by, the case was Pritima Kisoon, that's the former Solicitor General who was dismissed by Basil Williams. The case is Pritima Kisoon against Basil Williams, not Attorney General, but Basil Williams, and the sum here paid to Mr. Ralph Thorne is $4,200,000. So $4,200,000 paid again to Ralph Thorne, but in a case of Pritima Kisoon and Basil Williams, not the Attorney General. I'll speak about those things a little later. So that takes care of the GCOM chair matter. Then we had the no confidence motion case now. And this one is big. I don't know where to start with this one. Let me see. Let's deal with Mr. Maxwell Edwards now. Mr. Maxwell Edwards, you will recall that he appeared with the Attorney General in the no confidence motion case. So that case is the Attorney General against Bartlett Scotland and Mr. Barra Jagdev. And Christopher Ram, etc. 1.8 million. This is 1.8 million for the High Court. Then he appeared in the very case again against Compton Reed against the Attorney General and Christopher Ram a sum of 2 million, and then in the full court of the High Court, no, there's a different one. So in the no confidence motion case, you have 2 million and 1.8 million for the no confidence motion case, for the one filed by the Attorney General and the one filed by Compton Reed. Then you have in the Court of Appeal, and then you have in the same case, Rex McKay and Neil Boston, they offered legal services in that matter. Now they are appearing for Compton Reed. They were appearing for Compton Reed. Compton Reed was a citizen from New Amsterdam, a farmer, who claimed that he's filing this case as an interested citizen, interested in democracy, and you can go back and you will see his affidavit. But the Attorney General office has paid $12 million to Rex McKay and Neil Boston in relation to this matter, though they were appearing for a private citizen. I'll speak about that later. Then you have Dr. Francis Alexis. In the same case, the no confidence motion case, you will recall he appeared in the Court of Appeal. $25,000 US. Then you have Roysdale Ford appearing for Winston Jordan in a case filed against Winston Jordan and Anthony Egil. This is Winston Jordan against one Anthony Egil. Roysdale Ford was paid $1,710,000. This is not Minister of Finance. This is Winston Jordan suing in his private capacity, and the state paying $1,710,000. Then we have Robertson Law Firm, and he has a long invoice here. That is Mr. Mayor Robertson. In the case of AG against Barton Scotland and Barra Jagdale and Christopher Ram, and leader of the opposition, there is a no confidence motion case, 1.9 million. Then he's Mohabir Anil Nandlall against the Attorney General. I don't know which case is this. I got to find it out. He was paid another 1 million. And then in the Attorney General against Christopher Ram, that's one of the election cases again, 600,000. And for Mr. Maxwell Edwards, remember he appeared in the Eslin David against Chief Elections Officer. I have here 1.8 million. That's in the High Court. And in the Court of Appeal, I think that bill is 2 million or 3 million. I don't have that letter. I have a letter from him only 2 days ago. And then him again, well, I dealt with him already, but in the Eslin David case is 1.8 in the High Court. No, 1.8 in the Court of Appeal, and then another sum taking him near to over 4 million. I believe that must have been for the CCJ. But I'll make all these invoices public, and you must appreciate that these things have to be the subject of a special audit to determine whether these payments were properly made. And as I said, this is just a work in progress. I don't think that I have been given all the invoices that have been paid, but when the Auditor General is invited to conduct a proper audit or a forensic audit, I think that's the name for it, then we will get to the bottom of it. So this is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of private retainer contracts. There are many, many more as a whole bundle that I will release eventually. Now, You know that I believe in 2017, upon the instructions and directions of Mr. Basil Williams, I was charged with larceny of some law reports. I made it clear then that the law reports were purchased by the ministry as part of my terms of engagement, my terms of employment. I made that very clear publicly and to the police officers. Yet an audit was done. An audit was done by Mr. Williams, I have the audit here, by the Audit Office of Guyana into those law books. And the finding of the audit was done in February 2016. I have the report here, and the report says, let me conclude. The report says, conclusions in relation to the law reports. The Commonwealth law books / reports acquired by the ministry were not subject to storekeeping procedures and were not required to, since the Commonwealth law reports purchased by the ministry during the period were delivered to the former Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Mr. Anil Nandlall, as part of his condition of service as Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs. So this audit report, since 2016, exonerated me and those books from any wrongdoing. But nevertheless, Basil Williams instructed, and I say instructed and directed, SARU to institute those charges against me. When the charges were instituted, I said publicly that it was never a matter of the books. It was a matter of principle. Those books are my property, and I am not going to give up my property. I said that then, and that is my position now. If I can't defend my own property and my own self as a lawyer, then I'm unfit to represent anybody. I am unfit to hold this office as Attorney General. And that is a matter of principle which I took then, and I maintain up to now. At the time, I said to the SARU investigators, if it is that you want a donation, if the state wants a donation of law books from me, I am going to get it delivered to SARU. And I immediately ordered from LexisNexis the books. Bring the books there. I never opened it. Bring the other box. The 14 books that they claim, these are the books here. I purchased them, open them in. Bring my books now.
You see them here.
This is the books that they charged me for, which are my property. And I never delivered. Take it back. And this is the book that I bought since then to donate to the state. You see they're still in plastic? Take this back. So I don't know which arm of the state wants this, but this I have bought for them since then, but they refused to accept it, and they proceeded with charging me for larceny. So this is it was never a matter of the books. I can donate the entire volume to the state, but it was not that. It's a matter of principle. And I would have gone to jail if that was possible for my own property in defense of what I believe is right. So I have these books here. I'm going to offer it. I don't know which part of the state would like it, but it's here. I bought it for the state, and if they want it, whichever arm of the state is interested, they can call me and pick it up at any time. Put this back here. So the charges are still pending, however, and we will have to see how that proceeds. But I will not use my influence as a minister to interfere with the administration of justice. An injustice was done to me, but that's okay. I have survived. And those who tried it, those very books that they charged me for, were very instrumental in removing them from office. And I want to make that very clear. Those very books were very instrumental in removing them from office. If you were listening to the political cases, you would have heard how many cases were cited from India, from New Zealand, from Australia, and from throughout the Caribbean. Well, they were all in that book. They all came from those books. So those books served their very purpose to put them out of office. So Eddie, I will stop here. I think I've said enough, and we can open for questions.
Thank you very much, AG. We'll now open the floor for the questions, and as is the normal practice, you state your name, the media house you're representing, and you may proceed maybe with 2 questions per person in the beginning, after which we will, depending on time, take other questions. So just unmute your mic so I can once you unmute, I'll know who wants to ask questions.
Good morning, AG. Sir, can you say at this stage what steps will be taken to stiffen the penalties to, as far as fighting COVID-19 is concerned, because the Health Ordinance Act, as we all know, dates back to very many decades, and the penalties seem to be pretty weak in that regard. And can you say also when will cabinet responsibilities be gazetted?
Legislation is very, very old. It's a relic from colonial times, and unfortunately, it was never updated. And that will be one of the major issues on the parliamentary agenda, updating or modernizing the public health sector in terms of legislation. The Minister of Health has been tasked with the responsibility of constantly meeting, consulting with all the sectors in the country, and of course with the public as far as possible, and updating COVID measures. Right now, that is one of the things that he's looking at. For example, he will speak, I'm sure, later today on some new measures that will be put into place and that will carry sanctions if they are not enforced. So it is a work in progress, Dennis. We don't have a parliament right now, but certainly that is an area that will be reviewed with the view of reform. I know that is being worked on actively, and in due course, within this week, I think that should be completed.
Houses? All right, if there are no other questions,
I have a couple of others, but I was hoping to give my colleagues a chance to ask theirs. So if you'll permit, Minister, with respect to the national coordinating risk committee in the context of anti-money laundering, will you be retaining that committee in keeping with the architecture to fight financial crimes?
Dennis, I am still in the process of receiving an elaborate and comprehensive update from the AML-CFT structure in Guyana. For the time being, we will retain the current structure, but I recall that CFATF and other monitoring agencies faulted Guyana for some aspect of the structure. I recall the Attorney General had to go back to Parliament to amend the Act to demolish portions of the very structure that he created and which we criticized, if you recall. So I am not sure if this current structure complies with the letter and spirit of the recommendations which we are obliged to implement. Once I view that and the structure is fine, then of course it will be kept. But there is a general requirement, I know, for there to be a national type committee. Whether the committee in place is properly constituted to capture the expectation of that recommendation, I can't say at this point in time. But I know of the need, or rather the requirement, that there must be a national team or task force in place which embraces all the relevant sectors, so that when the agency or this whatever it's called, the National Coordination Unit, when it sits down, it's the entire state of Guyana apparatus is there. I know that there is a requirement like that. Whether the current structure satisfies that, I have to advise myself.
Minister, there's a question here from Raymond Cummings. With the police leading investigations into GCOM, Layne Field, Mingo, and so on, will the CI announced by the President go ahead, and how will that impact the police investigations?
As we said, there are going to be very different facets of investigations. One is police driven, one is going to be an audit driven, and one will be court driven or commission of inquiry driven. So we are waiting to see how that will unfold. But certainly, as we said, it's going to be fully and comprehensively inquired into and investigated, so that the people of Guyana must understand and must know what transpired and who were the intellectual authors as well as the actual perpetrators of the wrongs that the world saw that took place.
All right, are there any other questions? Ravin, I see you on mute there.
Yeah, thank you. AG, could you say in relation to the payment that were made to the those lawyers that you would have mentioned that were retained by the AG Chambers and the Ministry of Legal Affairs, could you say, I mean, you spoke to the fact that they will have to be the subject of an investigation by the Auditor General. Are you in a position to say at this time whether there's a likelihood of those money being recovered and how that could be done?
Of course, once the monies were wrongly paid, then the state has a responsibility to the taxpayers to take such steps that are necessary under the law to have the taxpayers' dollars reimbursed and recovered. And the Attorney General is equipped to take such steps in the civil courts at least, and if criminal conduct is unearthed in the investigation, well, then the police will have to be invited to investigate. But certainly at the level of civil remedies, those will be pursued against those who wrongly received these monies.
All right, thanks, Ravin. Any other questions?
Yes, could you say what steps will be taken to amend the legislation for the decriminalization of possession of small amounts of marijuana? I know this is a campaign promised by both major parties in Guyana, and it is also a recommendation by the Caribbean community on marijuana. So where does
your administration stand in fulfilling that promise?
I would be preemptive if I speak on that issue, Dennis. Give us some time. The administration has not been able to properly fashion its legislative agenda. The priority has been to find out where we are in government, find out our financial capabilities, find out the deficiencies in the state and to quickly correct them, emergency ones at least. For example, we are dealing with sea defense, we are dealing with COVID, we are dealing with blackouts, those are the matters of urgency that have consumed our attention. Those matters, Dennis, as the administration settles in, are going to receive attention as we go along. Unfortunately, I have no guidance for you on that issue.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Dennis.
Are you saying eventually that the law will be amended before this term of office ends?
No, I am not saying that, Dennis. I am saying that we have not reached that a stage to fashion a legislative agenda and to determine what is on the agenda. But all manifesto promises are going to be kept. Let me say that. I can commit to that. If that is a manifesto promise, well, then it will be kept.
And sir, when you had to issue the law books, the police came to your premises and they called to invite you to the station for questioning in relation to the matter. But in the context of the Christopher Jones case, the police actually turned up to seize items that are allegedly in illegal possession of Mr. Jones.
All right. I'm glad that you raised that. I'm glad that you raised that. The police came to my office on South Road during working hours and arrested me in the view of the public on a working day on South Road, put me in a police vehicle and took me to Soku. The police took Irfan Ali at 6 a.m. from his apartment in Kwamina Street and took him to Soku when they were charging him. The police took Bharat Jagdev from Church Street and took him to Soku. The police took Roger Lunchan in a wheelchair from Church Street in public view to Soku. And I can go down the list. There is nothing special about Mr. Christopher Jones. The police, as I understand it, went there at about 5 p.m. and they went there to verify that he had the items that was discovered in the audit, and that's the report I received. And he abused the police. He loosed his dogs on them. He demanded a warrant. Well, they went back and they got a warrant. And that is when nightfall and that kind of. But they went there simply to invite him, as they did to all of us, to go down to police headquarters and if he has the property, to take it with him. I didn't see the police do anything wrong at that stage. But when he started to, I'm told that he was very confrontational and abusive. I could have done that. Mr. Jagdev could have done that. Mr. Ali could have done that. That's how the police operate. They go to you, they find you where you are, and they invite you or they arrest you, and you give a statement and you are released. We all have to do that. So I don't see, I don't understand but if you go and you start this big confrontation, well then, things get out of control.
Any other questions, Dennis?
That they were legally acquired.
If that is the purpose of the investigation, Dennis, I produced documentation that my books were lawfully acquired too, and I end up with a charge. So the police will have to make the determination, and that is why they were inviting him to give an explanation. Ex facie, he has state's property in his premises. Now that, on the face of it, is wrong. Now, if you can proffer an explanation to justify your custody of state's property, isn't that the end of the matter? But you cannot confront the powers and the apparatus of the state in that manner. You're dealing with the law enforcement arm of a country. You can't begin to confront. Everybody must cooperate with the police.
Audit did not already prove that Mr. Jones's acquisition of the property was done through a legal process.
The audit proved that?
Well, I'm asking you, based on what I've seen from the document, it showed that yes, he applied, he got the property for a particular project, and that was it.
Well,
So
Dennis, listen.
That's what I'm trying to get from you.
The police made a determination. I don't run the police force. The police force is an independent agency of state. If a wrong has been done to Mr. Jones, let Mr. Jones sue the Attorney General. But the police acted in the way they did. They had the document. They wanted to take custody or to verify custody of the assets that prima facie belong to the state, and they went about to do that.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Leroy, I'm seeing that your microphone is on muted. Are you going to ask a question? Any other questions from any other member of the media?
Yes, please. Finally, in relation to the Ponzi scheme, could you say beyond a resolution of this current issue, if there are any steps being considered to prevent such a reoccurrence?
Well, there are statutory regulations in place which require obtaining a license to operate financial outfits of that type. The application process is also a filtering process, so that your suitability, your capability, financial and otherwise, to run and manage such a scheme are all assessed in that application process. Due diligence is done, and if you qualify, you get a license. If you don't qualify, then you don't get a license. This gentleman did not qualify. He applied and he was rejected. The expert and technical people felt that he did not have the qualifications, he did not have the financial wherewithal to sustain and run such a scheme. And on that basis, I understand he was not granted a license. So how do you prevent that from happening other than, well, keep strengthening your laws? And as I said, one of the legislation that is currently under review at the AG office is a securities bill, a modern securities bill. But is to, when you find the operations of these types of outfits, you apply the law. And that's all that is being done now. And as I said, and I want to repeat again, the government's paramount priority is to ensure that the persons who have invested their money, quote and unquote invested their money in this scheme are reimbursed.
All right. Any other questions from?
Is there a quantification AG as to how much money might have been seized from members of the public?
There is a figure of over $20 million US is being quoted. I don't know where that amount of money went, because as I said, the gentleman doesn't have a bank account here. The country was shut down for the past 6 months. So where did this money go? He has been saying that he has money in Las Vegas. He has been saying that he has money in Germany. He's been telling people all sorts of things. I can't imagine the American system will allow that that volume of money in an account held by a Cuban. They have peculiar laws governing Cubans' operations in America. But even Americans, to have that kind of money in the banking system of America, you have to satisfy a whole host of requirements. So the world is aware of Ponzi schemes of the types of Madoff. We had our own in the Caribbean, Stanford, I think. Stanford. He bought out half of Antigua, I think. And you know, these are the I am shocked. Let me say that at a personal level. I am shocked at the number of persons who allow themselves to be ensnared in this scheme and the volume of money that they have invested. It's staggering. It's shocking, mind-blowing.
Any other questions?
Can you
Go
say
ahead.
how many persons have actually come forward to date? And quickly as I have you, can you say, AG, whether there are any plans to hire Trinidadian lawyers to work in your chamber?
Trinidadian lawyers to work in my chambers? I don't have such plans. I think we have enough lawyers in Guyana. So no, I don't have any plan like that. And the other one is what is the other one?
How many persons have come forward so far? For the Ponzi scheme.
Dennis, I will ask the police to speak to the press because you know, government does not run investigations. I see people cursing the government. The government can only activate the agencies of the state. Government can't even give directions. So the police I will ask the police to engage the press and the FIU and the Guyana Securities Council. They should all be speaking to you and the Bank of Guyana governor, because those are the agencies that are involved in the multifaceted approach that we have taken in this matter.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the media, for joining us this morning. AG, thanks for being here as well.
You're most welcome, and I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the media, for sharing your morning with me. I have detained you long enough. Thank you very much.